Also best known for her iconic scream in Bride of Frankenstein, Elsa Lanchester was far from the damsel in distress type in real life. When I started this series about the most important men and women of horror history, I was under the impression that a lot of actors in early Hollywood had led fascinating lives. And while Vincent Price led a quiet, happy life, Elsa Lanchester was kind enough to give me exactly the kind of story I've been dying to read. Honestly, as much as The Bride of Frankenstein has always been one of my favorite horror icons, knowing Lanchester's story just makes her that much more valuable to me. Before we get started though, make sure that you subscribe to this channel and click that little bell thingy to get notified. I post regular movie reviews and gameplays, all with a horror theme to them, so trust me when I say that you won't want to miss what's coming. So with all the administrative stuff out of the way, let's talk about the woman, the wonder, the mistress, Elsa Lanchester. So Lanchester's story begins even before she was born. Her parents, James Sullivan and Edith Lanchester, were bohemian artist types who didn't believe in the whole institution of marriage. Now, for context, Eva was born October 28th, 1902. Edith Lanchester faced so much judgment for choosing to remain unmarried that her father and brother even kidnapped her and forced her into an insane asylum. The cause of her insanity was deemed to be overeducation. This caused such controversy in England at the time that it came to be known as the Lanchester kidnapping case. Eva herself talks about feeling a sort of pressure to prove herself as a child, as though her success could somehow show her maternal family that her mother wasn't insane. But otherwise, she seemed to be pretty on board with her parents' decision, even stating that she found being a bastard glamorous. When Eva was 11, she moved to Paris to learn dancing from Isadora Duncan. But when classes were cancelled for World War I related reasons, Eva moved back to England to teach dancing in order to pay for schooling. Might I remind you, she was 12 at the time. When Elsa was 18, an interest in theater sent her to the music halls to perform, and she also started the Children's Theater in Soho. At 22, she founded a nightclub called the Cave of Harmony, where she would perform little one-act plays and some burlesque. During the same time, she would also pose nude for artists to make some money. But it was through these stage performances that she caught the attention of a few big names. The most important of these names are James Whale, who will become more important in a little bit, and Charles Laughton, the man who would eventually become Eva's husband. According to Eva's autobiography, she discovered that Laughton was gay about 2 years into their relationship. But they kept this marriage up because it was mutually beneficial. Laughton was able to appear straight in front of the American public. And Elsa, meanwhile, was able to follow Laughton to Hollywood and began her film career. She appeared in a number of films, many of them alongside her husband, but her big break didn't come until 1935's Bride of Frankenstein. Frankenstein director James Whale recalled Eva from her burlesque days, and so he contacted her about playing the titular bride. The filming process was honestly kind of painful for Eva, who had to wear her hair wrapped around a mesh wire cage, and her eyes taped open to achieve that look of constant horror. But between that hissing sound she keeps making, those wide eyes, and that scream, she captured the attention of horror fanatics everywhere, many of whom consider The Bride of Frankenstein to be one of the most important entries into the golden age of horror. Although Elsa created an icon with this role, years later she seemed kind of meh about the whole idea. 40 years after the fact, Elsa complained about still having people approach her for that role, and expressed dissatisfaction at being remembered just for a scream. More than anything, Elsa was an artist. She described herself as vaudevillian. She loved the stage. She never came right out and said that she hated the bride character, but she clearly wanted to be remembered for more than that. She continued performing for years after Bride of Frankenstein, going back and forth between movies and the stage, including a road touring of her nightclub act. As she grew older, she began taking on more roles in Disney movies, including Katie Nana in Mary Poppins. She released a bit of music, mostly old-school Cockney songs. Overall, she had a harder time breaking into Hollywood than her husband did, and she was definitely overshadowed by him a lot of the time. She wrote 2 autobiographies later on in life, Charles Laughton and I, and Elsa Lanchester herself. But both works prove that Laughton had a very strong presence in her life. Elsa described the relationship as open. They had many lovers outside of the relationship, and they were both okay with that. She blames the fact that they never had children on Laughton's homosexuality, but even this has been in dispute. Actress and friend to Laughton, Maureen O'Hara, denied that Laughton was gay and insisted that the reason why they never had children was because of a botched abortion that Elsa had during her days of performing burlesque. Although Eva did not address whether or not they affected her ability to have children, she did admit to having 2 abortions at some point in her life. But her biographer, Charles Higham, claims that they didn't have children because Elsa didn't want to. Laughton passed away in 1962, and Eva remained unmarried until her own death in 1986. Shortly after the release of her last autobiography, Elsa had 2 strokes that rendered her bedridden, but it was ultimately pneumonia that took her life at the age of 84. Right up to her death, Eva identified as a liberal democratic socialist. Politics played a huge part in her life, and of course they did. Look at where her life began. Eva spent her whole life fighting for recognition as a woman, so with that in mind, it is kind of sad to think that she's only really remembered for 2 things: being the wife of a more successful man and having a great pair of lungs. But that is part of why I do a series like this, to show respect to the people who helped lay a groundwork for an entire horror culture. Where would we be today without this beautiful woman who lent her voice toward the weird and the macabre? Where would we be today without this beautiful woman who lent her voice toward the weird and the macabre? Thank you for joining me on this episode of Scream Queens. I had a lot of fun reading about this one. Next time we'll be talking about a horror hero, and again, I'm putting out a vote. Would you rather hear about Christopher Lee, best known as Hammer Horror Films' Dracula, and, well, every other movie ever? Or should I talk about Bela Lugosi, the original speaking Dracula? You can put your preference down in the comments, or you can follow me on Instagram. I will be holding another poll there. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click that little bell thingy to get notified. Thank you so much for watching, my pets, and I will see you next time.